I need care now, and you're probably the best expert around here, ain't you? You can take care of me too, eh? We're too old to take care of him too. You are literally a lifesaver, Penny, my dear, and we can't thank you enough for making our lives easier.
We might have to be taken care of pretty soon too, so maybe this is a good opportunity for you to quit your job and focus on taking care of ourselves as well as our son. I don't think there will be a better time for you to do what you've been training to do.
I'm positive you'll be glad to be finally able to devote yourself to us. You can finally do your job as my wife.
But you got it all wrong, Norman, love. I'm not your wife.
The hell do you mean, woman?
My name is Penny, and I'm a 62-year-old caregiver of elderly folks. My husband, Norman, is 55 years old and is 7 years younger than me. I'm his wife, but in actuality, I'm pretty much his older sister at this point. When I married him, I quit my job to focus on taking care of the kids, but now that they're all grown up, I applied for a job as a caregiver perhaps 8 months ago, and since then, I've been making a living by taking care of many kind elderly people in a home. I thought the experience might be useful to me someday, so I became a certified caregiver before I got married, just in case the need arose in the future. I was not presented with many options for a good job because of my age. So an occupational caregiver was admittedly pretty low on my list of priorities, but since I started working as a caregiver, I enjoyed it to my core, and I didn't feel like I wanted to leave for a better job. It was a career change for me. I was raised by my grandmother, and this new job helped me remember her very vividly. I often had instances of déjà vu, because the times we spent together seemed to have striking similarities to all the experiences I was having with the other elderly folk where I work. Such was me. I was working every day, and I had a good life, but that good life only lasted while I was at work, because when I got home, it was pretty much the same thing that greeted me.
Hey, when's dinner gonna be ready, huh? You can feed a bunch of old melting gas bags, but you won't give me any food? Sounds like a case of favoritism if you ask me.
You don't talk like that, Norman Thomas. I just got home from work. You could be a little bit more patient, you know. I also had to get some things from the store, so...
You're getting old, aren't you? You're getting so damn slow. It's so irritating to watch. I don't see how a stinky old hag like you could be much use to anyone and your pathetic excuse of a job.
Why must you say such things?
An old woman taking care of an older woman. Too freaking funny. Oh my god, maybe you're the one being taken care of instead of you taking care of the other geezers, huh?
I'm not being taken care of.
I'm wasting my time talking to you. Just shake a leg and make me something good for dinner, will you?
Yes, sir. My husband thinks the caregiving profession is stupid. At the beginning, though, when I got the job to be a caregiver, he was actually so grateful to me.
Thanks to your becoming a caregiver, I can now worry less about taking care of my parents. You've really saved our skins, Penny.
I know it's your job as a wife to take care of us in the future, but the fact that caregiving is also your occupation, you really are quite a curious person, aren't you? Just like what our Norman said all those years ago.
Well, in any case, this is a really good thing. If she can take care of us, doesn't that mean neither you nor we have to pay for our care? Because a family member's gonna be looking after us. It shouldn't be anything as outrageous as a home, right? Yeah, that's right. Because she'll be looking after you for free. If you were saving up for a good elder's home, you could instead use the money to travel around the country, guys, if not abroad. Yeah, that's something you'd really enjoy, eh? So, how about it, Penny dear? You're gonna take care of him, right?
That's right. I couldn't say no. My husband had originally shouldered the entire burden of taking care of his parents onto me. And for a while, he did indeed feel like I deserved some of his sincere thanks. However, perhaps he's recently forgotten how he feels about me accepting the task of taking care of his parents. Because he started to harass me about how I worked with old, frail folks. I'm now convinced it wasn't gratitude that he even displayed to me. I think it was because he felt relieved that he could get rid of the real nuisance that was caring for his parents, and didn't feel like I deserved his sincere thanks after all. Every day, Norman treats me like I'm a fool, an outsider, a slave to his will. My heart got more and more worn out. And right around that time, some trouble happened at work. There was a resident of the facility who had dementia. The staff had been watching her closely because of her condition, but it just so happened that she went outside and wandered around the neighborhood. She slipped out without anyone noticing, given the fact that the staff were having a meeting. The police kindly took her into custody, and after a neighbor recognized her as a resident of our facility, they called us to inform that she'd been found and that she was safe. They went so far as to bring her back to the facility. But it was still an impossibly careless mistake. I wasn't in charge of that particular resident, but I felt somewhat responsible for it. When I got home that day, and all of my emotions were wreaking havoc in my mind, so much so I couldn't even focus on the housework, and I wound up doing everything absent-mindedly. It was when I was washing the dishes in a daze that my husband slammed his hand on the living room table with all his might. I flinched, and he shouted,
"The frick are you doing? Being so frickin' lazy. You haven't even washed the bathtub."
"I'm sorry. I had some trouble at work. I'm not feeling doing anything at all right now."
Did I frickin' ask you to tell your whole life story, woman? I don't give a good goddamn if your situation was so bad you render catatonic. What I do frickin' care about is how well you do your job around the house, damn it. Your job isn't just to take care of some stupid, wrinkly old sacks of skin and bones. You have a much more important responsibility here in this house. You got another job to do, far more prevalent to everything else, serving me.
Those words felt like actual bullets. Up until that point, I couldn't care less about what he said to my face. All the pointing fingers and the insults and the condescending laughter didn't make me wince a bit. But that day was different. That day was when I couldn't put up with his bullshit. Why do I have to be the one to do it all? I work outside the home. I work at home, and what do? Nothing. You're not frickin' strong enough to do anything at home yourself. You think I'm an old hag? But you're more of an old woman than I am. Your pathetic excuse of a body was never as strong as mine. And now, you can't do anything other than waste your days away in a lazy daze.
How dare you?
This was the very first time I stood up for myself and rebelled. That's why he had such a surprised look on his face. He didn't talk to me for the rest of the night and secluded himself in his room. I knew I had done something that could have meant the end of my life as I knew it, but I just couldn't take it anymore. Norman left early the next morning so he wouldn't have to see me again. After a full 24 hours, my stress over the incident from the previous day had died down, and I felt much calmer. I thought about apologizing to him when he came home. And when I came home, he was already there.
I need to talk to you.
What's wrong?
I want a divorce.
Wait, what? Why would you want to do that all of a sudden?
Your insubordination yesterday was unforgivable. Why in the world would a wife explode in anger and yell such horrible things to her husband?
It's because you were making fun of me. You didn't make my situation yesterday better at all, and the stress just eventually exploded. You can't blame me.
Oh, but I can. You, a mere caregiver who can't have the spirits to do the housework properly, simply cannot make do without me. Divorce me. If you don't like the idea, get on your knees and promise me you won't ever dare talk to me like that again.
I was surprised by my husband's course of action, but I had no intention of divorcing him, nor did I see this coming. So I got a little scared and did what he pretty much ordered me to do. I apologized to him. I'm sorry. From now on, I'll be careful with what I say.
You do that. I filled out my part of the document here, so it's ready to be turned in whenever you like.
My husband put on a happy face as he finished saying that horrible sentence and went upstairs to his room. All that was left in the house was me and the completed divorce papers. I fell to the ground. this situation had actually turned me into a maid of sorts. If I still wished to be together with him, the only condition was that I follow his orders to the letter. I began to wonder if that was truly the right thing to do. One day, while I was working, a resident grandmother called to me. Her name was Mrs. Fletcher, and she started telling me about what she was feeling right at that moment. "I miss my darling Clark." "Is your darling Clark coming to visit you, Mrs. Fletcher?" "No, he's not here anymore. He's in a better place, but he's always been, well, as the young ones say these days, he's always been kind of a dick. Ever since we got married, I've never felt any love and affection from him. Everything I did, he criticized, and no matter how hard I tried to get better at the things he wanted me to do, it was never enough. Those times were pretty sad, I must say. And they lasted 15 years. But before he died, my darling Clark told me that he was so happy that he married me. That's what he said, my dear Penny. And with that one sentence, everything I'd ever known just went away. Everything we'd been through was behind us, and I realized how much he really did love me." "Wow, Mrs. Fletcher, is that really what happened? That's such a nice story." "I don't know if that's a nice story, my dear, but I did realize that even though it didn't seem like I was always loved. I became happy because of it." That's what she told me. Maybe my own husband was the same way. He swears at me so much, and he chastises me beyond anything cruel, but maybe, just maybe, he really does love me. After listening to what I heard from Mrs. Fletcher, I thought maybe when he left this world, he'll finally be grateful to me for being together with him. Maybe I'll feel his love then too. Maybe now was the time for me to endure. That's what I thought, and I set myself to endure my husband's sarcasm and complaints every day. However, something was wrong with Norman soon thereafter. Up until then, he always used to come home right on time, but recently, he's been coming home late, and right when I think things are all right, I smell a woman's perfume. I don't know what it is, but you have a very unusual smell, Norman.
Eh?
It smells like some kind of perfume. I don't remember you putting on any cologne with that scent recently, honey.
But I don't wear perfume.
Just when I think my husband looked a little flustered, he grinned mischievously and said,
Since when can an old lady like you smell right? You must have a rotten nose, because women's perfume isn't something you'll find on me anytime soon. You have to wait another 40 years for that, when you're dead, and when I'm all old and brainless.
He laughed as he headed for the bath, which I thought was suspicious. Even if he was pressed against someone wearing perfume like that on a crowded train, I don't think it would be able to stick that much. Could it be that he was maybe having an affair? That's what I thought, and my next course of action was contacting my sister, Sandy. She is 4 years younger than me, and she works as a nurse, and we are very close. She also has a child about the same age as my firstborn, and we often consulted each other about how to raise our children well. I asked her about my husband. I told her about my husband, and her response was, "I bet your husband's cheating on you, isn't he? He's not the kind of person who wears perfume, is he?" But I knew all that already. I knew my husband was having an affair. I think I just wanted my sister to tell me that he was. I guess I wanted to be sure. And then I watched him, very carefully. I watched his every move. And then a lot of suspicious things started to pop up. He'd come home from work late, claiming that he had to work extra hours, but he did not look tired in the slightest. His attitude towards me was getting colder and more condescending. Finally, he used to bring his lunchbox with him when he left the house for work, but he eventually stopped taking his lunchbox with him altogether. Perhaps we may lose interest in each other as we get older, but that doesn't mean that cheating on each other is acceptable in any damn way. What's more, not only was Norman cheating on me, but he also continued to make fun of me. There's no way I could ever forgive that. I don't know, Sandy. Maybe I should divorce him after all. There's a saying that's spreading like wildfire these days, and it's known as vintage year divorce. You know, where couples file for separation in their middle years after being married for more than 20 years or so. Divorce might actually be a good idea. I don't know. Maybe I've reached my limit. There's so much more to life than that, Penny. My advice is that you don't push your marriage too hard. It's not all about being married to someone you can't handle. It's okay to think about it. You still have time. But promise me this. Listen to what your heart tells you, and take the course of action that you think will help you most. My sister gave me a mental push, and it gave me so much courage. I went to a detective agency that very day to find out what my husband was up to, and lo and behold, official evidence was obtained after a mere couple of days. I even found out that he was going on a trip with his partner in crime. The very day the detective at the agency looked into my request and told me the results. Norman told me that he was going on a business trip. I decided to not say anything and let him go on that business trip of his. And in the meantime, I was thinking of filing for divorce while he was gone and then moving out of the house. That's when I got a call from my sister. "Hey, Penny. Norman's been rushed to the hospital. He's been in a car accident and he's seriously injured. Please come to the hospital as soon as possible." That's what she told me, so I went to the hospital. Right as I was walking towards the front door, Sandy came out to meet me, and she had an awkward look on her face. That expression gave me the impression that the worst had happened, but it turns that's not what the look was about. "Sis, I don't think there's a right way of telling you this, but he was brought in with a woman. Looks like she was in the same car as he was, and she's also seriously injured. Would you mind coming inside now?" I knew what was going on, so I went to the hospital room. I told the doctor, whose name was Dr. Takakashi, that I was family, and as a form of confirmation, he asked me,
Is the male patient your husband?
and I nodded in response. But then the doctor said,
The female patient next to him. Is that your daughter?
I was called before the woman, and she was definitely not my daughter. "No, sir, she's not my daughter." The air surrounding us took an extreme plunge into the realm of awkward, and I was sure the temperature dropped by perhaps mere 10 degrees or so. "In the meantime, could you please explain my husband's situation? I only just heard about the accident from my sister, Sandy McFarlane, and simply told me to get here, where I would be informed of the details." I just couldn't stand the ice-cold atmosphere, so I asked Dr. Takahashi to provide the details, and he revealed to me that his injuries were very difficult and that Norman was going to need nursing care.
We strongly believe the accident will render him paralyzed from the waist down. I can only advise you that you decide what you wish to do for the future with your family, Mrs. Kerrigan.
That's all Dr. Takahashi said before he left the room. My husband still seemed to be unconscious, and I figured the woman whom he was having an affair with would also be asleep for a while, due to the effects of anesthesia. At least, that's what Sandy told me. I decided that now was my chance. I found the affirmation divorce papers that my husband had prepared at home. As expected, his part was all filled out and signed. I signed my own part. And then, on the way to the hospital, I submitted the papers to a branch of City Hall. Everything seemed in order, and they were accepted. I immediately felt as though an elephant had stepped off of my shoulders. And then, I went back to the hospital room, where my in-laws were, as well. Norman was asleep.
Oh, you're here, Penny.
"You're awake? I can't believe you were in an accident. You have to be more careful in the future."
I can't even drive anymore, woman, let alone do it carefully. I need care now, and you're probably the best expert around here, ain't you? You can take care of me too, huh? We're too old to take care of him too. You're literally a lifesaver, Penny, my dear. We can't thank you enough for making our lives easier. That's true. You're my wife, Penny, above all else, and your primary obligation is to take care of me. This is the perfect chance for you to start doing that.
My husband and my in-laws seemed to be talking like they were pretty hopeful of the future. I couldn't help but laugh at this pathetic sight. They had no idea of the truth that was awaiting them. Perhaps Norman misinterpreted my little chuckle, because he then proceeded to say,
I just knew you'd be happy to be able to serve us. You're finally able to do your rightful job as my wife.
Yeah, I'm not your wife.
Eh? The frick are you talking about? Have you lost your goddamn mind?
No, I haven't. I've never felt better, actually. We're already divorced, you see.
Huh? Like hell we are. You never had the moxie to sign those papers.
My husband didn't seem to understand, even though all the cards seemed to be perfectly before him. I encouraged him to look next to his left. He did, and looked back at me with a priceless expression that was literally, oh shit. I can't believe you would go out with a girl young enough to mistake you for her father. I knew you were below anything human, but this? You never cease to surprise me, Mr. Kerrigan. When I told my husband that, his face morphed into one that clearly showed he was utterly and totally screwed.
No. We were going on a business trip together. I mean, she's only a junior at my job. It's not like we were going out together.
I thought you were shady for quite some time, you know, so I asked a detective agency to do some investigations. So there's plenty of evidence that states otherwise with a straight face, unlike yours, that's literally pain-stricken.
No frickin' shot. What are you talking about? What the hell do you mean, having an affair?
I'm talking about the truth that your son's been cheating on me for quite some time, it would seem. And I know about this, and I just filed for divorce this morning. Y'all are on your own if you want to take care of him. I don't take care of strangers. Don't just lay there, you idiot! Say something! Perhaps my mother-in-law became so upset that I couldn't take care of her anymore. I'm not sure, but she started pressuring her son to come up with some plausible excuse to save her soul. But perhaps Norman himself believed he had no other choice but to admit it, because he responded with,
Yeah, I tried to have an affair with her, and I was the one who invited her on the trip. When I was at work one day, she told me some very personal things. I was so happy, so I suggested we give it a shot. You're not getting younger either, Penny, but I felt like I was still relevant to younger girls. As a man, I began to have some pride in myself, and that's what also caused me to treat you the way I did.
What are you talking about? This is so disgusting. You really thought that I would forgive you if you just explained everything?
I'm sorry. It was wrong of me. I'm so sorry. Just please, don't give me a divorce.
Too late, Mr. Kerrigan. We're divorced already. From now on, you're only going to be talking to me through my lawyer, and we're going to have a talk about alimony eventually. Why don't you ask your little sweetheart to take care of you and your parents, She's still young and strong, and I'm sure she's a respectable person. I left them all with that and left the hospital room. My in-laws were furious with my husband. That's what they get for trying to depend on me completely. They'd spent all their savings. How are they going to take care of each other? I don't know, and it sure as hell wasn't any of my frickin' business. And my husband apparently later asked his sweetheart to take care of himself and his parents. But of course, being the young, vibrant woman she is, with a career ahead of her, would never accept such a request. Her injuries were significantly less serious, and when she left the hospital long before Norman did, she seemed to have severed contact with him. She also quit her job, and it was clear she took measures so that she would never see Norman again. He had an accident with his company car, and his superiors found out that he was attempting to travel with an unfaithful lover in the car. The company then wanted to fire him, but needless to say, Norman is a very proud bastard. Instead of accepting the dismissal, he merely boasted he couldn't give his all to his work anymore and resigned voluntarily. He can't work anymore, so he's trying to survive on his severance pay and his savings, but the consequences of that is that he's forced to live on the edge. My old in-laws also thought I would take care of them, and they had spent all of their savings. They were thinking of using my husband's money to live in an elder's home, but I'm sure they'll run out of money in about 3 years. Norman paid alimony to me in one lump sum, and I was very satisfied. And as for the affair, my ex-husband was the one who had suggested it to the girl. So I didn't demand any alimony from the woman whom he was having an affair with. And now, months and years have passed since the incident, and I'm still working as a caregiver. I told my in-laws that I don't take care of strangers, but the residents of my workplace are all my family. I will continue to take care of them to the best that I can, and I hope they all live happy lives until a better place welcomes them.